And now, a reading from his word, from 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 26. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel.
And here's 2 Chronicles 22:2. 42 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was also Athaliah, the daughter of Omri.
2 Samuel 24:9. Joab reported the number of fighting men to the king. In Israel, there were 800,000 able-bodied men who could handle a sword, and in Judah, 500,000.
But according to 1 Chronicles 21:5, Joab reported the number of fighting men to David. In all of Israel, there were 1,100,000 men who could handle a sword, including 470,000 in Judah.
Psalms 18:30. As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him.
So however you feel about biblical inerrancy, the word of God, or a faith that's over 2,000 years removed from its origins, help us understand how all of this, or even any of this, could lead you to believe in an all-knowing creator, because the show is starting right now.
All right, well, today is July 30th, 2023. I'm your host, Christy Powell, and joining me today is my good buddy, Objectively Dan.
Whoop, whoop. What up?
We are live from the Free Thought Library in front of a live studio audience. Let's take a look at these beautiful people.
Awesome. Happy to be here. It's been a while since I've been on AXP, so
yeah,
really good stuff.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you what, it's nice being in this host chair because, as you yourself said, that makes me the senior person in this dynamic, which is all I've ever wanted.
Yeah, that's right. We generally say whoever hosts longer is in the host chair. But we kind of started at the same time, so you get it today, though.
Around the same time. Yeah. But, there's still an older twin and a younger twin, right?
Well, there is that aspect to it, too. I mean, if you want to go there. But, yeah, I'm super stoked. I'm ready to talk to some folks. And we do have some announcements I think we got to get through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I want to let people know that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And I want to take a moment and just acknowledge that I caught a little bit of your show earlier this week.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
On Fridays, you do Truth Wanted.
That's right.
Y'all get into all of the fun stuff. It's not just look at the trees and look at how ridiculous the Bible is, like aliens and all kinds of conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about the, I guess, kind of nothing burger of a truth bomb that got dropped on the congressional floor? Like, what is going on with aliens?
I'm glad you brought this up because everybody on Twitter, or I guess it's X now, which is
that's a whole different. That's so dumb. There's so many conspiracy theories there alone.
We're not even going to go there. But everywhere online, people are like, "Oh, the government has confirmed that aliens are real," which is like not what happened. There was a congressional hearing that involved 3 former military officers, one of them being David Grush, who is former U.S. intelligence, who said that the government was covering up aliens. But this is a hearing. He's testifying to Congress about these
He's
programs.
Not a member of Congress. He's not a member of anybody's cabinet, of anybody's anything.
Signing a law saying, here I declare that aliens exist on this day, whatever. And the other 2 pilots also were talking about their experiences with UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon. David Grush hasn't actually seen anything himself. He was just saying, there's other people that I've known when I worked for, part of this investigation with the Pentagon and stuff, that have recovered non-human crash sites and non-human biologics is what he calls
biologics.
Yeah. So it's a whole thing, but he's testifying to Congress about programs that Congress apparently doesn't know that they're funding, because they were like, what are these programs? What are we talking about? And he never gave any specifics. He said he would do it in private conversation, but nothing was.
So why have like an open congressional hearing if we can't talk about any of the stuff that needs talking about?
Because there's a couple reasons. Because this whole my microphone that was aliens right there. That's
naturally
the real proof. But look, this a big part of this was because I listened to the entire 4-hour thing because I'm a masochist. But
which we thank you for your service.
Thank you. But it was mostly about these pilots saying, look, we need to have better reporting methods for UAPs because we feel like that people are going to make fun of us or our careers could be threatened if we say, hey, this is a UAP, because there's obviously some stigma around that if you're going around saying that you saw a flying saucer.
I mean, it feels weird that we went from UFO to UAP. Right. And in both of those situations, the idea is it's unidentified. I don't know how that immediately leaps to aliens or how that turns into a problem.
That was the whole reason why UAP started to become a more like mainstream term within these circles. But like their criticism is, look, there's no mainstream reporting method. There's some civilian outlets, but nothing within the U.S. military that you could do that. So the Pentagon actually did have a task force, which they renamed to some crazy other name to like try to investigate the UAP stuff. And that's where David Grush was a part of that stuff. And that's why he's coming out as like this whistleblower saying, oh, there is alien stuff. But every time they asked him, okay, which organizations are involved? When did this happen? Who is saying this? He didn't give any specifics, zero. And was like, well, it has to be in private conversation. So it's like, okay, well, so much for this public hearing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. All right. So the word on UFO APs or whatever, it remains inconclusive.
It remains inconclusive until David Grush can give us some stuff to actually look at. But so far, it's just one guy in front of Congress saying things are true, which they may not be true. And who's ever lied in front of Congress before, Christy? That's never happened, right? So anyway, yeah, that's the story. That's the UAP thing.
All right, so still nothing on the alien front. I don't think that we'll have the opportunity to break that news when it ever comes. But I guess we're still looking for the truth.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be the one breaking it. If anybody here is going to be doing it, it's going to be me. Okay, I want to be on the front lines of that, but we'll see.
I always have to wonder, like on Discovery Channel or whatever, you see these commercials that are like, tonight at 6:00, the secrets of Bigfoot, and I'm like, you would find out about that shit on, I guess, X, like. As soon as it happened, right?
Yeah, I would hope so. But I have a feeling the aliens are smarter than using X to make their presence.
Well, that's probably fair.
Sure.
All right. Well, this is a call-in show. We are very much excited to be talking to you. We hope that you'll give us a call. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment to look at the results from last week's Share Your Experience question of the week.
Yeah.
Last week, we asked people, what Bible verse sounds dirty? And here are our top 3 answers. Number 3 was from R.C. Blazer, who asks, how about this one from Genesis 42:27? And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money, for, behold, it was in his sack's mouth.
Damn.
Yeah.
Sack's mouth.
Yeah, my mother is here in the audience for the first time ever. Woo! And it's a great opportunity to be able to share my career in this way with her. This is what I've come to. This is who I am as an adult.
Oh, man. I bet she's really proud right now. That's great.
Oh, man. At least we're not doing an episode of Secular Sexuality.
Right. Could be worse.
Yeah.
Could be worse. But, hey, we just got started, so you never know.
Yeah, we'll see what we can get into. Give us your best calls. Send us your wildest super chats, and I will be obligated to read them aloud.
That's true.
All right. So our number 2 favorite answer from last week came from Dirk Brothel.
Classic Dirk Brothel. Love it.
This version of a highly edited Psalms 23 sounds dirty. The Lord makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen more wholesome fan fiction than some of this stuff, right? Like, yeah. That's some interesting word choices.
Yeah. Well, if you know, you're telling on yourself a lot right there, and I just appreciate your bravery.
Hey, well, my mom's not in the audience.
Yeah,
right now,
fair enough. Well, our favorite answer from this past week came from KnowWhat1653. He describes James 4:8. Come near God, and he will come near you. Ooh. It's beautiful. It's the comfort that I go to in times of distress.
Yeah, no comment. I think that one speaks for itself.
Yeah, naturally. All right, well, we do have a new question this week. We're asking for wrong answers only. where did the Catholic Church really get all of its money? Dan, what do you got for that?
Where did the Catholic Church really get all of its money? I mean, part of it's Nazi gold, right?
Yeah,
That's
fair
gonna be
enough.
part of it. Part of it is alien technology that they got to sell off.
I assume so.
Yeah, pretty much every single weird conspiracy in history, the Catholic Church could play an angle in it, and it would kind of make some sort of sense, I think, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that definitely makes a lot better sense than my theory that they are just funding both Islam and Catholicism to try and, generate some conflict.
like a Coke Pepsi thing.
Yeah,
going on.
yeah.
They
I
just
mean,
throw 'em both
it's the illusion of choice, right?
Yeah.
With the Abrahamic gods.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. That's a good one. I like that one. But yeah, please give us your best comments below, and we'll read them next week. Not me, but
Maybe some other poor schmuck will get stuck with that assignment.
Yeah.
But for now, I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and talk to God's Sign in California.
Okay.
She's calling about some questions on the morality of Christianity.
Okay.
God's Sign, what you got for us today?
Oh, I was just responding to your question that was in the chat that asked, is Christianity immoral? And 90% of people say yeah, but I said no.
All right. Well, tell us why. Why do you believe that Christianity is a moral value system and something that we might want to aspire to?
Okay, well, because it teaches you to be selfless.
Sure, but you can be selfless and not be a Christian, right? Why Christianity in particular?
What do you mean in particular? Why
Yeah.
Christianity?
Well, again,
Why not Islam? If Islam teaches you to be selfless, or the Boy Scouts of America, why not join those organizations rather than your church?
I guess because that wasn't the question on the chat. It was, is Christianity immoral?
Yeah, but you think it is moral because it asks you to be selfless, but does it also ask you to do other things that may not be
That are
selfless,
maybe
or
not so
they-
super
yeah.
moral, possibly?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you consider the option?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, let's say, for example, well, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Chris? There's a lot of different routes we could go with this. I mean, firstly, I'll give you my take, right? I don't think Christianity, by most metrics of morality, is moral. I'm saying most metrics because people have different
Sure, there
metrics of
is
what you
no
can-
one definition of what morality is.
Yeah.
Christianity purports itself to be one metric by which you can measure the world, and so by that definition, circularly, Christianity is perfectly moral.
Right.
But
right.
anybody coming in from the outside might have some questions.
Right. So I'll give you some examples, right? So, one, of course, is something that we talk about all the time on this show is Christians' treatment towards LGBT communities, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's a pretty modern example of what's been happening. But, I mean, really, it's happened for all time, but it's been in very public debates in the past recent years. I don't know how many gay kids that have been homeless on the street because their evangelical parents have kicked them out, you have to see before you realize that maybe they came from a fucked up way of living, right?
Possibly there's a better moral value system that exists.
And again, maybe you don't subscribe to that particular theology, and fair enough, but with every kind of version of Christianity, there always seems to be some kinds of rules or some kinds of inhibitors that prevent people from living in what my opinion would be their best lives, right? Maybe another one would be just rules around sexual prohibition and marriage in general, right? Not saying that, you can't be a Christian and live a good life in your marriage. But there are definitely ideas that are kind of patriarchal sometimes, or saying look, there has to be a man that is the breadwinner of the house, or the women has to be submissive to the man, all of which could be found in various verses in the Bible that have historically been really bad for people's living situations, right? People who may have lived in abusive households that can't leave their marriages because, you can't get a divorce under Christianity, right? So there's these different kinds of rules. But again, Christianity itself, of course, is very broad. It all depends on what your theology is ascribed to. Hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, well, God's Sign, I mean, we can definitely keep going, but I'm very curious about your take, your stake in this debate. I mean, where are you coming from when you say that Christianity is moral because it teaches you to be selfless? Can you build on that at all for us?
First, I'd like to respond to the two examples that you just gave.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was the protesting against the LGBTQ community. So, Jesus never did. Christ never did that. Christ never taught any of that.
I mean, he and God are the same person, and the God of the Old Testament definitely had some very severe things to say about men who have sex with men, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't really feel comfortable giving you credit for that, but for the purposes of this conversation, sure, fine. Jesus never said anything about queer folks.
Okay. Well, since you argued against it, I would say that...
Right, because millions of Christians do believe that. So at some point, is it Christianity, right? I mean, how many churches have to say being LGBT in any sense is wrong in order for us to say that's a Christian doctrine?
I don't know, because what will you say when you find a so-called trans Christian?
Yeah, there definitely are trans Christians. I don't deny that.
Okay, then it's not a Christian doctrine all out. But my response to your objection was that the God of the Old Testament, as you said, and Jesus is the same person. Well, that's just your understanding of saying that the same person. That's also not all Christians.
Sure.
That's also not a belief that all Christians have.
You're right, and because the truth is, there isn't one single belief that all Christians have. Seriously, I don't think there's one.
Yeah, not even the Bible itself.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that it's interpreted, the version, the translation that we're using, everything is at least somewhat open to interpretation. So let's not talk about all Christians or Christianity. God's sign, tell me about your beliefs. Where did they come from? How did you get to them? And why do you believe that they are moral and something that you might recommend to other people?
Oh, okay. Well, I read the teachings of Jesus, and because they're selfless, to me, that's being selfless is a moral standard. Jesus never.
But you made the decision, I'm sorry to jump in here, you made the decision to read the words of Jesus and to ignore what? Everything that came before that? How did you make that decision? Based on what?
To ignore I'm not ignoring everything that came before that. I'm just taking the highest moral standard that has been presented to me and accepting that.
Yeah, I'm going to make the argument that you can keep looking, that you can find a much higher moral standard than the one that has been presented to you by the gospel. There are a lot of options that don't have any instructions on how to take care of your slaves, that don't have any instructions on how to dominate your wife. There are a lot of moral philosophies that you can investigate, and they are tricky. We wouldn't be here talking about moral philosophy week in and week out if this wasn't a complicated subject. But I'm wanting to suggest to you it can be a lot better than what you're going to find in those first 4 books of the Bible, of the New Testament, yeah?
No, Jesus never taught any of those things that you just mentioned.
I might encourage you to spend a little bit more time with this belief system that you're telling me is moral, that you don't seem to have a whole lot of background with. If you're going to tell me that you believe that Christianity teaches people to be selfless, and then I'm going to say, well, what about this part of Christianity? What about this part of Christianity? And then you say, oh, well, that doesn't count. That's not real Christianity. Then how the hell is anybody supposed to come alongside you and learn how to be moral using quote-unquote Christianity?
Well, how are you defining Christianity?
I'm just starting by talking about things that are directly in the Bible. I'm talking about the words of Paul. I'm talking about the words of, quote, God as handed down to us through these oral traditions. There's plenty here to pick at. I don't have the whole book memorized, but I know that there is plenty within just the scripture, just the Bible itself, without getting into any theology, without getting into any complex interpretation. There is plenty written on the page that I think most people would have a moral problem with. Okay,
well, I'm talking about Christ. When I think of Christianity, I'm thinking about what Christ taught and what Christ believed, what Christ said. So when you bring up things from Paul, who is not Christ, and you bring up things from the Old Testament, which is a Jewish book, That's really not what I'm talking about.
Okay,
So
just
let's-
looking at the things that Christ said.
Let's start from there then. So we're just talking about Christ. So we're talking about the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, everything that Jesus is described in these books, this is the highest moral standard we can achieve.
Correct.
Okay, why do you believe that to be the case?
Because selflessness is the opposite of selfishness. Selfishness is the lack of morality. It's only caring about yourself and your own benefit, your own well-being, your own gain. Selflessness is caring about the gain and the well-being and the goodness for others, regardless of the effects it might have on you.
Yes.
But if everybody displays selflessness, then you wouldn't have to be selfish, because nobody would let you fall behind, because you're not letting them fall behind. So everybody would be taking care of each other.
I mean, I want to suggest, Godsign, that you seem to have a moral philosophy that's built around the notion of selflessness. That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
I don't know that the Bible or the words of Jesus really help to get you there or further this much. But Dan, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine. I was just wondering, because I asked you why you decided Jesus's philosophy is the highest of all, and you said it's because selflessness is the best thing ever, which, okay, that says a lot about selflessness, but what does that have to do with Jesus? Like, why do I have to listen to what Jesus says to be selfless?
No, I don't know why you have to listen to what Jesus said. What I'm saying is that Jesus taught selflessness. Jesus is the epitome of that philosophy or moral code, because he did everything for everybody else. Everybody shitted on him and persecuted him, and they even killed him. And he still didn't curse nobody. He still didn't go to war with nobody. He still didn't. All he did was give, and he even gave his life.
Okay. I mean, did he really give it up? Because he's still a god at the end of the day, right? Like, he kind of came back from the dead. So it's almost like, was it really a sacrifice? To sacrifice something is to lose something and not get it back, right? Like, this is my problem with talking about Jesus as the highest moral teacher, because we also have this theology that says Jesus is God himself, right? So I don't know how we can reconcile those two things. If he's a human and he's making these sacrifices, that's one thing. But if he's a God, how much of a sacrifice really is it?
Yeah, if he is a human making these sacrifices, then the whole story basically boils down to 2,000 years ago, there was this guy in Israel who was a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
And, okay, we can definitely read the moral philosophy of people from 2,000 years ago and scratch our heads and say, those are some good thoughts in there.
Yeah.
But we don't need to take it as biblical truth, as the gospel. We don't need to think of it as the good news. Now, if he did die and return from the dead and is in fact one with God and is all powerful, then, I might sit up and pay a little bit more attention to all of this. But if we're going there, we have to consider the whole thing.
And also, there is consequences to believing him or not, right? Like, if you don't believe in Jesus, you will burn in hell for eternity. So it's not like it's a completely selfish or selfless thing. I mean, he's asking for something in return for something else. One could argue that that's extortion to some degree, because it is a threat to people. But he also cursed fig trees. But that's neither here nor there.
So that's a lot.
I don't know. When did...
Yeah, Godson, I'm going to give you kind of another minute to really express yourself, to help maybe put a bow on all of this, and I think we'll move on. How do you react to any of this?
I don't know. You just brought up a lot of things, but when did Jesus teach that if you don't believe in him, you'll burn in hell for eternity?
Well, for God said that whoever shall believe in the Son shall have eternal life and be saved in him. And, the converse of that is that you're dead in Christ and that you go to hell. I mean, I forget the exact verse, but he definitely talks about separating the wheat from the chaff, right? He talks about, that there's separation from God for those who don't believe in him.
Or hell, even just putting people to death for cursing their own parents.
Yeah, he also says, those who deny me, I will deny in front of the Father, again, with the implication that there are, consequences to their mortal soul.
To being denied, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so giving somebody the gift of eternal life, for example, if I told you that this life is a life that God gives us all, and our very life itself is a communion with God. Mm-hmm. But then you have some people who say God doesn't exist, God's not real, this life is just scientific, blah, blah, blah. Well, then, okay, then why would you want Jesus to, that's like denying God, right? So why would
we do that, yeah.
God, so then why would you then want God to give you eternal life when you don't even credit God with this life that you have right now?
We're just playing along.
He doesn't have to give me eternal life. He also doesn't have to give me eternal damnation either, right? If he's giving me this life, then the whole point is that it's supposed to be a gift. A gift doesn't have connotations to it if not followed up upon otherwise, right? Like, it's not like, oh, Christy, I'm going to give you this cup and you have two choices. You can either take it and drink whatever's in it,
or I'm going to pour it all over your face for eternity. Or I'm going to pour it all over your face
right now. And, is that a gift? I mean, I am giving him an option, I guess, but does he have the option not to choose? I think that's the key thing here. And the truth is we don't, right? It's a binary. It's you either follow Christ or you don't.
True.
And it's important to remember here, God's sign, that we are kind of coming along with you and sort of going along with the notion that God exists at all. Yeah. Never mind whether he's a moral character or an immoral character.
Yeah.
Dan and I, for our part, don't think that God is, period. Yeah. So whether he's a good guy or a bad guy is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
And, I just want you to consider that there are maybe the possibility that a lot of your theology could be kind of worked out with a little bit more fear and trembling. Maybe when you've got a little bit more of this thought through, you can give us a call back and walk us through. Is that fair?
No, because you keep saying that it's a binary thing, and it's not. Never did Jesus say that anybody who doesn't believe in him is going to have eternal damnation.
I mean, I think we just walked you through it. If you want to maybe send us an email or find some other way to respond, but we're not going to play the game of facts versus not facts. Jesus very much did make those kinds of statements, and it's important to recognize that the Jesus Christ of the Bible made a lot of threats about bringing a sword, about separating families, about putting people to death. And it's not okay, honestly, to separate all of that out and to try and create this beautiful, angelic, peaceful figure when he's making these incredible threats, not just of death, but of eternal damnation.
Yeah. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes in him has eternal life. Blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to find the right verse here. But, yeah, it's embarrassing if I don't have the verse on hand for you, and I apologize for that. But, if I had another 5 minutes, look, I could show you several passages, some from Jesus, some from Paul, that do talk about the consequences of non-belief, right? There's definitely, things that will happen to you if you don't believe. Mm-hmm. It's not just a neutral option. So, I don't know. That's all I got for that.
Unless you're Catholic, and I don't even know how you get to the concept of purgatory, and even that's weird. But the temporary punishment for eternal damnation.
This also goes back to an earlier topic in the conversation, though, right? Which is this idea of what is Christianity. And my general strategy, Christy, as you know, is I like to have the caller define that for me, because every single person who calls in is going to have a different version of Christianity, right? True. For every 10 Christians, there's 11 different versions of Christianity out there, right? It's there may be some very common ideas, but even then, you're going to find exceptions to the rule. There's no one single identifier of what makes someone a Christian, other than the fact that they call themselves a Christian. It's really all you can do.
Yeah. All right, Godsign, final word. We'd love to continue to hear from you through email or in a future call. Is there anything else you'd like to say today?
Yeah, I mean, plain and simple, Jesus never taught that if you don't believe in him, you're going to be eternally damned. You just won't have eternal life, that's all.
Oh, okay. Maybe read that book. Maybe read those 4 books that you're so proud of and give us a call back. We do really appreciate your time and hope that you'll keep searching. All right. Well, I will go ahead and take this moment to let people know about the annual Bat Cruise that is coming up at the end of August, August 26th on a Saturday, 2023. You can join the atheist community of Austin for a fun summer evening on the water with like-minded free thinkers, folks like Forrest Valkai, J. Mike. I'll be there. Dan, are you going to make it out to the Bat Cruise this year?
I'm actually not going to make it out this year. I had made some plans before they announced the date.
Oh, yeah.
So this is going to be my first time missing it since I've been hanging out at the ACA. I'm really bummed out about it. But that also means that there's an extra ticket for anybody else who wants to go, right?
Be available. Somebody's got to get drunk with me. So
yeah,
it could be you.
Someone has to be. He was pointing to his mom when he said that.
Yeah, sure.
No, but seriously, keep Christy accountable while he's on the boat.
Yeah, please do.
Be pretty
Yeah, I can get into real trouble. Yeah. All right. Well, Dan, what do you say we talk to Gene in Texas?
Gene in Texas? Absolutely. Let's do it.
You had some questions about a verse in Matthew 10. What's on your mind?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. I did call in last week, and, I watch like 3 shows of y'all's on Sunday. I'm going, which one was it? Anyway, I brought this up, that there's a problematic set of verses in Matthew 10 that make Christianity look pretty bogus, okay?
All right, yeah.
And I've never heard them referred to in any of the shows, and I've watched like a few hundred.
Well, I mean, where were you when we were on our last call? Honestly, like, what are these verses? Maybe there's a possibility God's sign is still watching.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Okay, well, it starts. It's Matthew 10, verse 1. Mm-hmm. The disciples are named at that point, so you know who Jesus is talking to. All 12 of them show up there, and this is where Jesus is telling them. Giving them instructions on what to do before he returns, before the second coming, while he's gone. And one of the things he says is, do not preach my message to any Gentiles or Samaritans. My message is for the children of the house of the lost sheep of Israel only. Mm-hmm. Well, the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, well, I'm not Jewish.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, according to this, I'm never even supposed to.
Yeah, it's weird how you draw your theology. Like, do you include just the Gospels? Because then you better be Jewish. If you want to go beyond that, when, Paul makes these things available to us unclean Gentiles, then, all right, that's a different conversation. But now we got to bring Paul and all of his baggage into all of this.
Exactly. But then it continues, though. It even gets worse. Then he tells them he's only going to be gone. Like there's the verses also in Matthew and Mark and Luke where he says, some of you will still be living when I return, right?
Right.
Okay, well, in this particular one, he says, not only that, it's going to happen so fast, you won't even have time to walk all the way through Israel preaching my message.
Yeah.
I'm coming back before you get done. Well, that's a pretty short period of time we're talking about here. Okay, so I'm like, okay, well, that's a problem. That's a problematic thing. Now, I think what happened was I was so excited, and I'd had a confrontation with some people at a convenience store, specifically one guy, but there were 2 other people present on the Friday prior, and when this guy who, because of his belief system, referred to LGBTQ in disparaging ways, even going so far as to call them an abomination. Mm-hmm. And I jumped all over him, not physically, but it looked like it was going to get physical until one of the guys there said, hey, dude, this isn't worth it. And I had to agree it wasn't.
Sure.
It wasn't. That's not going to change his mind, And we actually parted friendly. I shook his hand. I said, I was sorry for getting on him that way. I just disagree with him strongly about that, see. And so that consequently, a couple of days later, when I make the phone call, I'm all excited and everything. And I think I may have made it sound like that when I referred to these verses, that it was proof positive that the belief, the religious belief system of Jesus and so on and so forth was absolutely bogus. that it was proof, you see, and I did not mean to convey that.
Yeah.
What I meant to convey was that it's just severely problematic.
It is problematic for a lot of reasons. So let's talk about this issue, right? So if you actually read the Gospels, okay, again, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, back to back, you're going to find a very different version of Jesus in each one. Some similarities, sure, but there's some weird differences that you don't expect. If you start with Mark, you're going to find a Jesus that does miracles and then tells people don't tell other people about it. Seriously, like that's a very like the running theme in this, and you wonder, wait, isn't the whole point to like tell Jesus and to tell about like the good news?
Well,
of
you know
Jesus?
the first two rules of Fight Club, Dan.
Right,
Like
it is Jesus Fight Club. It literally is. It's like I just like leaned back in the chair so hard that I just kind of like flipped for a second.
Did Jesus keep you from falling over?
Bro, Jesus took the wheel, dude. That was crazy. Anyway,
God is so good.
okay, anyway, so what was I saying? So I was really distracted by that. So there's these weird different depictions of Jesus, right? And you see these differences. Here's another one that you're talking about here, this verse in Matthew 10, who says, actually, don't bring this message to the Gentiles. We want to bring this to the people, of Israel, right? And even in the earliest days of Christianity, you can go as far as the book of Acts, where Peter, the like number one apostle of Jesus, right? Like Jesus' biggest fan, is getting into arguments with Paul, a guy who never met Jesus, on who this message is actually for. And the weird part is, I mean, it is recorded in these texts of them disagreeing on whether there's these different interpretations of what Jesus' message even is and who the message is for and who is saved. And this is really weird. Why would there be these disagreements? And it's because these books are all written at different time periods, at least 40 years off or so from when Jesus was allegedly around. And there is already sectarian differences between the early Christian church. I mean, even at the very beginning, there were these splittings in these interpretations of what the message of Jesus was, what he came down to earth to do, and how we're supposed to interpret it. And even later on, in some of the New Testament letters, they mention this fact of, you may have heard that Jesus was to return in our lifetime. Well, actually, that's kind of a
got an update coming in.
It's more of a metaphor here. It really could be at any time, and we have to expect. I mean, they're literally doing this kind of backpedaling, like right at the beginning, because there was an interpretation of Christianity that said, yes, Jesus is coming back within our lifetime, like it's going to happen. I'm talking like 2012 apocalypse style, like that's the year the Mayans were talking about, not some other, like that was kind of their feelings on it. So yeah, what it demonstrates isn't that Jesus was bogus. What it's really more accurately, I think, is reflecting is that these were written by different people at different times with different interpretations of Jesus. And the truth is, there's never been one universal idea.
Even if you take the Bible as the perfect and inerrant word of God, which, we kind of already talked about that today.
Yeah.
It does fall apart.
Yeah. That's my long-winded way of, describing that. So what do you think?
Yeah. I did. Excellent. I do have one other question for you. This thing has always mystified me, this other thing, and that is this. I wonder if you guys have ever heard of, now this is a Southern Baptist thing. I was indoctrinated very strongly. I'm 67 currently, but thankfully it never took hold. I mean, when I was 5, I went, okay, this is bogus. But that was a luck of the draw thing, really. Just luck of the draw. I lucked out. I dodged the bullet, essentially. But I was still had to go to church 3 times a week, and plus vacation Bible school, singing in the choir, and all that kind of stuff. One of the other things that I was required to do was every Wednesday night there was a meeting called the RAs. Does RA mean anything to you guys? You ever heard of that?
No. RAs.
Okay, it stands.
Yeah, not a resident advisor.
That's what I was thinking.
It's an acronym for Royal Ambassador. Okay. And it's sort of like the Boy Scouts of the Southern Baptist Convention. Okay. And we would have these meetings on Wednesday nights. We did get to do some cool things, such as going camping and stuff like that, But the girls had their own thing called GAs, which previously stood for Girls Auxiliary. Oops.
Ooh.
Auxiliary. Careful with that.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
So they realized
Somebody has to back up the royalty, right?
Yeah. I figured the Boy Scouts would be the Boy Scouts of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Now, when the Boy Scouts are too liberal for you, like,
that's,
then you might just be a Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
Right. Well, anyway, so here's the deal. They changed girls auxiliary to girls in action. Okay.
Oh, well.
Girls in action.
So
I think Christy's talked about that tape on secular sexuality before.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was surprised because, of course, Matt Dillahunty, as I understand it, was Southern Baptist. And he never has mentioned the RAs, and I thought I was under the assumption back at that time that it was a pretty much across the board Southern Baptist thing. I do know that many churches in Texas were involved in it, and that it was just something you were expected to send your kids to.
I don't know. I mean, I think both of us know a lot of Southern Baptists. I've never heard of it. Have you?
Yeah, it's new on me.
Well, I mean, the mystery deepens.
Yep.
Okay. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Maybe one day I'll get a chance to ask Matt about it.
Yeah, maybe so. That's something I got to look into more. The royal ambassadors. I'm sure there's some sort of scandal that could be found.
I mean, you start digging, like it'll be
if
there.
The Southern Baptist Convention is involved. I think.
Yeah, seriously. I think one of the reasons we're probably not talking about it is because that's like 10 layers deep, and there's so much dirt on the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth layer.
Right. Yeah, there's probably something there too. But thanks for your call. That was good talking about some of the more like weirder verses of the Bible, like when you like detail for detail that just kind of like again don't really make
fall
sense.
apart. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the first like true, I guess, slivers that kind of like started to separate me from my faith was I thought I would be a very good Christian, and I would not only read my Bible every day, but I would read my Bible every day in such a way that I could read the entire Bible every year.
Yeah.
And so I started reading a chronological Bible where every day it would give you, however many verses, but it would be not in the order that we are all familiar with, but rather chronologically how it happened. So when you get to the Gospels, when you get to like Chronicles versus Kings and some of these parts of the Bible, you would see just plainly right next to each other, was it 1 million men or was it 1,000 men?
Right.
And that, I mean, as an evangelical, that really shook the notion for me that the Bible was the perfect, inerrant Word of God.
Yeah.
And it's just challenging.
It is. And when you become a more advanced, when you get to a level 3 atheist,
right? Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you do realize
I'm still waiting for my decoder ring.
Right. There are like legitimate explanations for the differences in some contradictions, alleged contradictions that like do make sense or can be interpreted to where they would make sense. But there are some hard ones, like the numbers situation there, where it's like these are just two different values. I don't know how you can.
Yeah, and for me, like I feel like I talked about this last time I was on the show, and I don't mean to harp on it overly much because I recognize that for the vast majority of the time that Christianity has been a thing, the number of people who have tried to read into it in this like perfect, inerrant, every single letter in the Bible is supposed to be there kind of way, that's a relatively new idea, and I appreciate that. And if you continue to be a theist without believing that notion, okay, totally fair. But like also, if it requires that much interpretation, if it if this all-knowing, perfect God, even if the Bible isn't perfect, if God is perfect, why the hell can't he give us a perfect book?
Yeah.
Why is that imperfect vessel his strategy for trying to convince people? And you start pulling on that thread.
It seems like communication would be really important. Like, seems like you want to get that message like super clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's pretty foundational.
He needs to give us an update. A new book, maybe? Oh, Book of Mormon. Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah.
All right. Never mind. I think we have a super chat that we need to read.
Greg Markowski offers $9.99 saying, "Happy Sunday. Thanks for the show. We appreciate that. I also want to take a quick moment and just remind people that you can also support the ACA through Super Chats and a number of other ways. You can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. This gives you access to special chat emojis.
Yes.
Or you can send one of these Super Chats, and Dan and I will be obligated to read it. So please take advantage of that opportunity. And let's go ahead and pan the camera over and take a question from our live studio audience.
Question from the audience. Let's go. What do we got?
We'd need a better theme song than that. I mean, I appreciate your efforts.
First of all, no, we don't. Second of all, if we do, then I'm going to record it. So
perfect. I'm here for it.
All right. Okay. What do we got from the audience here? Let's see.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm Lee from Ontario, Canada.
Hi, Lee.
And I was raised Catholic. I raised my family Catholic, practicing Catholic, although I considered myself very progressive, until I was in my early 50s. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell took so long for me to figure things out. And others I talk to, and they're in their teens or earlier, or in their 20s, and they figure this stuff out. Seems like so much easier. What's going on?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, right? I think belief, we tend to treat belief in our community as the acceptance of philosophical propositions. I believe A, and I believe B, therefore I should believe C, right? And sure, in an analytical sense, that's fine, but that's just not how everyday people work, right? We are the products of sociological factors beyond our control. The reason why everybody in this room, probably grew up or was around Christianity is because we live in America. And we live in America, and America is a very Christian nation in the sense that it has had this Christian culture for a long time. And it's why most of us probably haven't had a lot of experience with, Hinduism or Islam, for example, right? That alone is going to play a factor. But another one is what is modernism and eventually postmodernism has given us is a value of deconstruction and a value of criticism of many ideological systems, not just Christianity, but world systems that have developed civilization and have given us the nations that we have today, for better or worse. And with that voice of criticism comes the scholarship and comes these communities and people who are actively voicing some of these concerns. There's probably always been people in history that have been able to kind of maybe deconstruct or kind of maybe secretly not believe, but they haven't really had the institutional power to do that, right?
Sure.
The atheist community of Austin exists, but it's still one atheist media organization out of what, 2, 3? Probably not a whole lot. I can barely tell you the other ones. So how many churches are there in the world, right?
Just in my neighborhood, you can walk to maybe 5 or 10 different churches. And here in Austin, there's the atheist community of Austin, which if we were comparing ourselves to a church, we are far from a mega version.
Right.
And little to no other atheist organizations.
Sure.
So
I think
trying to get this word out.
Yeah, it's less about individual brain power. It's not. I really think it's less about how smart you are. I really think it's more about how you grew up and what kinds of things you had access to. I really think that's going to play a bigger part.
Yeah, that's ultimately what it comes down to for me too, Lee. Is, there is often this perception within the atheist community that I am too smart to fall for your imaginary God. And a lot of us as atheists, especially new atheists, like to kind of look down our noses at people for believing in fairy tales. But the truth is, there are some really brilliant theists out there.
Sure.
Being smart and believing in God are not mutually exclusive ideas, and being dumb and an atheist is very possible.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I really do think it has less to do with your ability to think or reason or your logic, and more about your experiences. I mean, what kind of life have you led? What were you taught at a young age? What opportunities have you had to break free from some of those things?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think. I think that's the best way to talk about it. Yeah, sure. Anything else, Lee? Nope. All right. I think we're good then. Cool.
All right.
Yeah. If I was a medieval peasant, I would go super hard for God. I would be.
I mean, hell, I did. You know.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, I did.
I was a small town peasant, but.
Yeah. I get you. Yeah, for sure. But anyway, do we have more callers we want to get to?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
we do. I'll tell you what. Let's talk to PG here in Texas.
Cool.
PG, what's on your mind?
I don't know if my sample is just non-representative or too concentrated, but I've always wondered why seemingly atheists simply switch from the supernatural God to the God state.
Yeah, you're going to have to walk me through some of those terms. When you talk about a supernatural God and a God state, what does a God state mean?
Well, the attitude, say, evangelists would have toward God, the all-knowing, all-powerful being, it seems that many atheists have that same attitude toward the state, especially Democrats, I would say.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that most atheists, if not all atheists, leave religion and then become sort of authoritarian or want to rather give a lot of power to government. Is that kind of your contention?
That's what I've observed.
I would definitely check on your sample size. Honestly, the amount of like straight up anarchists within the atheist community is pretty high. Maybe not. That may or may not be a bad thing or a good thing or whatever else, but just to say, I really can't support that notion. I haven't really seen that represented.
Yeah, and like it is true that atheists in the United States tend to have more of a progressive lean. But that's not necessarily reflected in other secular Western nations as well that have larger non-religious populations. It does tend to even out a bit more globally. Mm-hmm. I think part of it, why you see it in the United States, is because like a lot of atheists do come from like evangelical backgrounds and do come from those. So like when that switch happens, when they're deconstructing that, they may also deconstruct some of their political ideas. And it just so happens that if you grow up evangelical, you're probably also like right-leaning, right? Like that's kind of the political culture that you grew up in. So your political ideas also get deconstructed along with your religious ones, and there's a comorbidity there, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was definitely raised to believe that there were no Democrats going to heaven. So, I didn't like leave Christianity and then immediately sign up with the DNC. But it is worth taking a moment to just recognize that there's a reason why a lot of people are leaving Christianity in America. And oftentimes that's going to have to do with treatments on political issues like, LGBTQ rights and, a number of other things. We could list it off for all day. But ultimately, PG, I just can't help but feel like your contention holds a lot of water. Is that fair?
Well, apparently our sample size are different, and I'm glad to hear that indeed not all atheists seems to just be state worshippers, because I can give the example from my home province of Quebec in Canada. Before the 1960s, it was a very religious and a little closed-minded society, but now, within a span of, I would say, less than 5 years, the state had filled the void where the church was healthcare, education, social services. Now it's the fiscal hell of North America.
Well, yeah. So the Christian church has been the institution, been the representative institution for education, for healthcare, and for government for a long time. Because there wasn't any other choice in the matter for a lot of people. Like, that was just kind of the thing. Like, the Catholic Church literally used to be, like, giant rulers of nations. They had huge influence over political policies. So, like, when you're talking about worshiping the state, they literally were the state. So, that's just like a switch in power more than anything. I don't know, the fact that people may have more positive views towards universal health care, I'm not sure how much that has to do with their religious beliefs. I think we'd have to look at the individual numbers on that besides just anecdote, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say to that other than
get a bigger sample size.
Get a bigger sample size. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of atheists that lean left, but why is there a conviction of people on the right that have a God belief? Conversely, right? Maybe that's also something that's interesting to look at. But I don't know. That's all I have to say, I think. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I guess we'll let you go then.
PG, thanks so much.
GG. Yep, there we go. So I think we have a crowd question next.
All right. Let's talk to the audience.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing good. So I just
what's your name?
Omar.
Omar, nice to meet you, Omar.
Yeah,
what you got?
Omar from here.
Oh, cool.
Since we were casually talking about aliens earlier,
yes.
I always see casual Christians are kind of okay with you'll see them believe in aliens or talk about aliens, but the really hardcore fundamentalists, usually don't.
Oh, that was me. I was such a little dick about it. When I was like 13, 14 years old, I read a Bible verse that convinced me that aliens could not coexist with Christianity.
Yeah.
And I was such a jerk to like every teacher, every preacher I could find on the subject. But sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, you're good. So I guess, are there like specific verses or ideas that kind of contradict the idea of it that people will refer to, or are there some that don't contradict it?
Absolutely.
Refer to
100%. Because if you're a fundamentalist Christian that doesn't believe evolution is a thing, that believes the earth was literally created in 7 days, there's nowhere in the picture that says, oh, also God created this other intelligent life out here in another galaxy.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes he doesn't answer your prayers because he's busy dealing with people in another galaxy.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of implications there. Did Jesus come to save the aliens as well? Like, that doesn't really mesh well in that worldview. God's design is for people, right? This world is supposed to be for human beings.
Made in his image, specifically.
In his image. And so that's where our intelligence comes from. That's supposed to be what makes us different from the rest of the animal kingdom, right? That's supposed to be the God part that's in us. So what does it mean when there's another being out there that's just as capable, if not more capable than us? And it also confirms that there is a scientific worldview of, several, light years distances between us, right? Like there's people that literally don't believe that say like, well, what we see is the result of the last 7,000 years, not 13 billion years, right? It just kind of confirmed to a sort of old universe hypothesis that just doesn't work if you have a creationist worldview.
Yeah, if the world's only been here for 6,000 years, like aliens don't really factor into it.
Yeah, so that's why you got to see that hostility, because the modern scientific community, the ones that do accept the possibility of aliens, accept that on modern scientific principles by which fundamentalists fundamentally reject. Yeah. That's why that is. No verses as far as I'm aware of, though.
Yeah, I remember reading something about how, you shouldn't look for signs among the stars or something like that, and taking that as like, aha, proof.
That would actually be weirder if the Bible was like, there are no aliens. I'm just spelling this
I just
out
wanted
here.
to go ahead and say.
I just want to be clear. Because they didn't have a cosmology that went beyond Earth, honestly. Like, everything in the sky was a star. They didn't say that there were planets. They didn't say that
the sun revolved around the earth. Everything did.
Literally. That was I think there
heresy to say otherwise.
I think that there are very specific verses, specifically when talking about the story of Joshua, where they do have a literal belief that the sun is a thing that revolves around the earth and can be stopped, and that stars fall from the sky to earth. There's also several analogies in the Bible that make that idea, and that doesn't really make sense if you know them as hot gases in the sky, but more so as something that can just, be within Earth distance, I guess.
I'm constantly kind of pointing out the age of the Bible because I think it's really important that when we try and go back and read it now, that we recognize that just the basic psychology of being a Jewish person 2,000 years ago is so entirely different. Never mind the language differences or like the obvious cultural traditions. There are just so many concepts about the universe and everything else that even if we study them, even if we become such experts in them and get into all this biblical scholarship, it doesn't really prepare us to be able to get into the mind state of some of these people. And I think it's important to not lose sight of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Glad to hear from you.
Good stuff. What else we got, Christy?
Yeah, well, you and I are going to wrap the show up here in about a half hour or so, and I just want to let people know that they can continue to get all of the quality content from the ACA at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts, where you can listen to all of the latest shows, all of the different programs, and keep this ongoing. And for now, how would you like to talk to Jay in Illinois?
Let's see. Yeah, let's do Jay in Illinois. That sounds great.
Jay, what you got for us?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing all right, Jay. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to make this, quite kind of simple. Simply put, God is life,
All right.
and He created everything. life created everything, and that's it. Bottom line,
Okay, I mean,
God is life.
all right,
God
I
is
appreciate that. How do you know?
How do I know that God is life?
Yeah.
Yes,
And also,
it's a very bold, very strong, passionate statement that you're making. I very much appreciate that you're making it. But like, why should I believe you?
Also, I would like to know too, as long as I want you to know how to know that, and also what does it mean when you say God is life? Because I'm not entirely sure what that means.
Okay, well, okay, life is like everything you see.
Okay.
And a box of
basically,
chocolates.
It's more of that comes from life. Yes, that's from life. Everything you see is from life.
Okay. So
Yes.
everything is made from, so viruses, cancer in children, war, that's all from God too?
Yes, it's from God.
Okay.
Okay.
So all good things, good and bad. That is all God.
Everything is from God.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Good and evil.
Okay.
Okay.
And now let's go back to Christy's question, which was, how do you know that?
His voice, he tells us.
Okay. And when you say his voice, are you talking about, his word in the scriptural Bible? Are you talking about the
Yes.
personal revelations that he gives to you? Like, how do you hear God's voice?
Yes, from his word in the Bible.
Okay. So reading the Bible
from
is
his-
how you learned that God is life and God created everything.
Yes. Yes.
Why should we believe the Bible is true?
I mean, well, it's telling us the truth.
Yeah, but I'm telling you that I'm telling you the truth, and I'm saying the Bible is not true.
Yeah, I mean,
so
the Quran
checkmate,
says it's
God.
telling us the truth. The Book of Mormon says it's telling the truth. I mean, there's a lot of books that say they're telling the truth, right? But I think you
the
probably
Blair
agree
Witch
that-
Project said that it was true.
Yeah, yeah. So how do we know that this book in particular is telling the truth?
Well, it tells us what the truth is. We got to know what the truth is, and it's telling us, it's defining the truth. It tells us.
Wait, you got to know what the truth is,
Not
but you
the
got to
Bible.
get the truth from the Bible, and you know that the Bible
Yes.
is true because the Bible says that it's true, and you know what truth is because you were told to get it from the Bible. Do I have it right?
From his voice. Okay, from the voice of God comes the truth.
Okay. So I think Christy was trying to illustrate a problem here, which is if we have a book that's telling us what the truth is, and we don't know what the truth is without having the book itself tell us what the truth is, we have what's called a circular argument, right? We're kind of defending our claim with the claim itself. So we need to know, how could we validate this outside of the Bible? In other words, how do we know that what the words in the Bible are saying are true without using the Bible as a reference?
Well, you got to have the Bible first. I mean, you got to know what the truth is.
Yeah, but
But
even
why?
if we take the Bible, I mean, we mentioned it at the top of the show. The Bible says in different places different numbers.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what is true?
Yeah.
How many soldiers fought with David?
Well, I mean, look. You say that we have to get we have to start with the Bible, is what you're saying, because we have to start with truth. But why do we have to start there? I mean, are there other ways that we can know truth?
You're looking for, okay, you want another way.
Yeah. Well, look.
Some way to at least confirm the Bible.
Here's the thing, Jay. I think you know that the Bible hasn't always existed in history, right? There was a time where people didn't have the Bible. Did people know what truth was?
A few did.
A few did. So there are other ways outside of the Bible to know the truth, right? To know what truth is.
Yes.
Okay.
Common sense.
Okay, common sense. So let's say that that's a way to know the truth, is through common sense. All right? That seems like a more basic thing than the Bible. right? I'd say more people in this world, if common sense was a thing, would have access to common sense than the Bible, perhaps, right?
Repeat that. Yes.
Well, yeah. So again, a lot of people haven't actually read the Bible, right? Like I don't know what percentage of people have read it, but there's a lot of people that haven't actually read the Bible, but maybe they have common sense. I think it's maybe common sense would be more common than the Bible, right?
Common sense is inherited.
Sure.
In everyone.
Okay.
I mean,
so
it's inherited.
So
Yes.
if we all have it, then we
why
all
do
have
we need
the
the
truth.
Bible?
Yeah.
What?
Well, if we all have common sense, which, by the way, I don't agree with that.
Yes.
I think common sense is kind of a misnomer. I'm not sure it actually exists. But let's say it does exist in this worldview. If we all have common sense and it tells us what true things are, why do we need the Bible?
The Bible is like for details about the past, because we haven't lived we don't live in the past.
Sure.
I mean, the Bible tells us about the past, and it tells us about the present, and it tells us about the future. So the Bible tells us everything we need to know.
Okay. But you also said it tells us about the concept of truth. You said that we can't know truth without the Bible, right? And what I'm pointing out is, well, if we have this common sense, going back to this common sense notion, it seems we can tell what the truth is without the Bible. Like, it seems like maybe the Bible records some true things, right? But we don't have to know what truth is outside of the Bible. We don't have to use the Bible to know what truth is, right? Is kind of my greater point.
We don't necessarily need the Bible to know that there is a God, because common sense is telling us that there is a God.
Okay. So there's another claim I might disagree with you with. Why would common sense tell us that there's a God?
Why would common sense tell us there is a God?
Yeah, I mean,
because God, because He wants us to know Him. He wants us to know that He exists.
He must not care if Dan and I know that he exists, or any of the good people in this building. Do we not have sense?
We're recording in the Atheist community of Austin right now. We're in front of a live studio audience, most of which, if not all, don't believe in God. So, do we... There we go. So, are we not using common sense? Or what is it about us? Okay, so we're not using common sense. What about your common sense leads you to the conclusion that God exists?
I mean, when you look around and you see the existence of things.
Yes.
Man, I had consider the trees on my bingo card. Damn it.
You know it.
Sorry, let him finish. Go ahead.
You know it came from somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, Christy right here. He came from his mom, who's in the audience right now. The God's not necessary for that. Where does God fit in?
God created parents.
God created parents? I think Christy's mom came from another mom. And I think
it's moms all the way down.
It's moms all the way down. And then maybe like all the way to like single cell organisms or something.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on that. You have to ask Forrest Valkai. But the point is, if we're talking about life, there are alternative explanations as to where life may have come from. We don't have all the details, but we do have some ideas. For other objects in the universe, we have chemistry, we have physics, we have other processes that can give us the things that we see. But all of those things have something in common, which is that they are material. Right? They don't necessarily require a God to exist. I mean, I have to know, why does it have to be a God? Why can't it be anything else or nothing at all? Why a God?
Because without God, it wouldn't be able to exist.
Is that true?
I mean, yeah, Jay, it seems like you've come to this notion that you can't understand how the world could exist without some all-powerful force putting it into the universe. So I guess I would just ask you to really consider, could it possibly be anything else at all? It feels like there's this question of, I don't know how the universe came to be, and I guess carry the one, therefore God. And there might be some other conclusions that you could draw here. It's like you recognize that the universe exists and you don't know why. And so therefore you just have to kind of pencil God's name in there. And I would challenge you to really think about, why is there that assumption? And, not for nothing, but would you have that same understanding if you had been born in Japan? Would you have the same notion of common sense and God if you hadn't been born surrounded by people who treated God as if it was this obvious thing that we all took for granted?
There are Christians, believers in Japan.
There are indeed, yes.
But they are the minority. They represent less
Do
than
they have
3%
less common sense there?
As far as my understanding, Christians in Japan represent less than 3 to 5% of the population.
Is there something inherent to that experience that lacks in common sense?
If anything, the Japanese people would say, no, the common sense, if you look at ancient Japan, not necessarily modern Japan, but they'd say, no, common sense says Shintoism makes the most sense. We have our ancestors and,
at least they were real.
Access to them. Yeah, this idea of God being what's common sense, I don't think matches up with the rest of the world.
Well, God is life, and anything outside of life is you might as well call it death, non-life.
Okay, sure.
So nothing can come from death or non-life.
I don't even know what that means.
I have no concept of what that means at all, Jay. As far as I know, there are no living things anywhere close to the planet Saturn, and yet the planet Saturn exists. And I don't know if that came from God, because God is life and God is all things. I'm going to just say, Jay, I really appreciate the conversation, but this circular argument has spun around enough times to make me kind of dizzy. And I would really ask you to go back, watch this back, get out a pen and paper, write things down that you have said, and then question yourself if they actually make sense in that order. These are tricky concepts, and nobody can convince anybody about something so important over the course of a 10-minute phone call. But I would really challenge you to sit with some of these ideas a little bit. They may make you a little uncomfortable, but there's a reason that you called us today. And to say God is life and then not really help us understand what that means is not meeting your needs or our needs. So if you believe God is life, ask yourself why. Ask yourself how you know that, and then maybe give us a call and explain it to us when you're prepared.
Yeah, I would like that. But yeah, if we're just talking about vague notions of God saying, "Oh, He's life," and then there's death, it's like that. This just doesn't tell me anything new or interesting. It just seems like it's kind of a woo idea.
Yeah, it's a nice rally cry. It's a good banner. It makes a good bumper sticker, but I don't know if it really works out as a cosmology, as a moral philosophy. Jay, I know that's a lot to drop on you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Thanks for taking my call, and choose life.
I appreciate you. Choose life. I don't entirely understand what it means, but I'm on board with it.
Ball is life.
Yeah.
Okay. Ball is life. So I'll just keep on balling.
Keep on balling. All right.
Anyway. Yeah, I think we got time for at least one more, maybe two more calls.
Yeah, I think we can maybe sneak a few in. I want to make sure to mention to folks that they can pick up a limited edition Atheist Experience t-shirt. Hello, I'm an atheist. Why, you ask? Because believing in a God who sacrificed himself to save us from himself is a bit much to ask of any logical person. Visit tiny.cc/merchaca. Some of that circular reasoning, some of that theology that we've been talking about all day hits right there.
We've been talking a lot in circles today, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's been happening. I think for our next call, can we go to Jose?
Yeah, for sure.
Honduras.
All right. Jose, what kinds of things can we help you with today?
Oh, I think you have to hit that talk button again there. Because I don't see it on my side. Let's try to get that going again. Jose, can you hear us?
All right. Well, we will hopefully return in just a moment. For now, how would you like to talk to, or who would you like to talk to next?
Let's maybe do. Let's talk to Figgy in New York.
All right, let's do it. Figgy, what can we help you with today?
Hey, good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank you guys for what you do. I recently discovered this network, and I'm in the process of launching my own network, hopefully tonight. And I've just derived a lot of inspiration from you guys. So I want to thank you.
Hey, best of luck to you. Thank you for helping us get the good word out.
Super awesome. As long as you're not starting like the Christians Against Atheists network or something, good luck to you.
No, nothing like that. No, it's going to be called Unlimitability. It's going to be very mental health based, very positive centric, very entertaining, very cool, very chill. But I wanted something just kind of disturbed me as I was waiting to talk to you guys. And that is the previous caller, Jay. Yes, Figgy Pudding. Yes, that's adorable. I've never heard that one before in the comments. But anyway, yeah, Jay disturbed me only because, I used to be a Jay,
Sure.
And I know how tough it is to, like, I very much believe that especially here in the United States, Christianity just really does a great job of programming the masses. Mm-hmm. And I know because I was one of those. I was in it for 26 years. I was hook, line, and sinker. I lived it, went to church 4 times a week, started a Christian social networking website. Like, I was drinking the Kool-Aid and I was in. But even as in as I was, I always had issues with it. I always just thought, something's just not right here.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, some things happened and I kind of reevaluated my life, some good things, some bad things, and I just finally decided to walk away from it. The thing is, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration when people do leave, whether it's a religion, a cult, whatever, is I almost call it an existential crisis that they kind of deal with.
Absolutely.
Like, we've been programmed for so long to do things like this way, like pray for this and do this and fast and yada, yada, blah, blah. And then it's like, well, in the real world, you got to do it a little bit differently and whatever. And, I feel that it's almost, you hear your J's and it's almost like PTSD for me, because it's like, dude, I was you. I was who you are right now. And it's like, there's a reason. I think a lot of people who are calling to debate, they're calling to represent their God as they're programmed to do. But at the same time, I think that there's a curiosity factor as well. And I hope that all those people within the sound of my voice can just hear, you know what? I'm not going to say it's easy to, question your faith and your beliefs, but you know what? If you're questioning it, there's a reason for that, and there's never anything wrong with that. If your God is real, if your faith is the one chosen faith, like they're all programmed to make us believe, then you know what? You questioning it, it's kind of like what the Amish do. They let their kids go off. I forget what it's called when they go off on like
Rumspringa.
Popularly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a fair point, that if your belief system can't hold up to a little bit of scrutiny, then it's something you really ought to be questioning. That it makes sense to take something as serious as your eternal salvation as something that you really need to sit with and poke at and ask questions of.
We haven't, and continue to not, live in a society that really allows us to critically think about the ideologies that we have in our upbringing. What Jay was employing was something called a thought-terminating cliche. And if you've heard this term in psychiatry, this is kind of a loaded language that's used to make you stop thinking about a problem. If you've ever heard somebody say something like, oh, well, it is what it is.
That's exactly what I was going to quote. It is what it is the classic one.
Doesn't actually answer anything, doesn't tell you why something is. If someone says, oh, why can't I do this thing? And they say, well, because I say so. It's another example of this, right? Okay, well, why does your authority matter on the opinion, right? It's there are these things that happen, and religion has really popularized a lot of these kinds of thought-terminating cliches, like, oh, I don't know, but God knows, and that's all that matters, or we'll learn when we get to heaven.
God will work it out. Ask God when you meet him.
And this is the kind of culture that we've grown up in. Instead of saying, well, why we say, well, okay, I guess it's above my pay grade, it's above my station, I'm just going to not think about it. And because we have access to all the education and tools and communities that we do now, it's so much easier than ever to deconstruct this. But, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, that wasn't the case. And that's why we are the minority, and we'll still be the minority, but still growing, I think. There's a lot more people that are obviously in the process of deconstruction, but it takes a long time to just change the culture more than anything, right? I do think that we're more so the products of cultural situations than individual intelligence. The comment section on YouTube proves that to me every single day. Just kidding. I like everybody that that's not true. I don't like everybody that comments.
Not everybody, but we do appreciate you.
But hopefully you see what I'm saying here.
Well, no, regardless, I just really, I love what you guys do. I appreciate it. And I also, like I said, just anybody who can hear me, anybody, it's okay to question it. Either your religion is going to hold up or it's not. And if it doesn't, then it just means you can move on to something bigger, better, and realer in life. So
hey, thank you so much for saying it. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Figgy. I think we'll go ahead and let you go from that so we can maybe try to take Jose
and sneak
again.
in at least one more call. Let's jump there in just a moment. Do you spend much time in the comment section, Dan? Do you debase yourself in that way?
I used to look for every video. I don't look as much now, especially since we started doing clips for individual episodes. So it's like, I know what I said in this video, so there's no point for me to look at the video. I was there. It's like, it's just for the comments. But yeah, I don't know. I do look sometimes. What about you? Do you always look?
I try not to get sucked into it. For the last several times I've been on this show, I have come on with purple nail polish.
Yeah.
And I just got so frustrated by a constant stream of comments talking about my black nail polish, which just felt very insulting. And then the insistence that it was always some sort of Satanism thing. And I just want to make it very clear to the audience, the Satanists never got back to me, so I'm here,
right.
And now I'm wearing black. Anyway, just want to clear that up. Let's talk to Jose in Honduras.
Your mother just must be so proud.
I know it.
Okay, Jose, hopefully we can hear you this time. Can you hear us? What's going on, Jose?
Yes, can you hear me?
There we go. Awesome. Jose, how can we help you?
No, I was just wondering what caused you guys to lose your faith.
Great question. Simple and sweet. You want to start?
Yeah, I've given this answer in much greater detail on a number of other ACA programs. I'll just say that briefly for me, I was raised in an evangelical environment where it was made very clear that the Bible was absolutely perfect. And once I started to recognize that there were some logical inconsistencies within the Bible, maybe some textual errors, and then ultimately that there was this pervasive notion that all queerness, that all LGBTQIA type issues were going to be rejected by Christ, I started to pull on that thread and I realized I just could not embrace a worldview that said all gay people were choosing to be gay and therefore choosing sin or rebelling against God. And so I figured if one piece of the Bible couldn't be true, then maybe the whole thing started to fall apart.
Yeah, for myself, it kind of depends on what you mean by losing your faith, because you can have faith in different ideas and even different institutions within Christianity. For example, you could be a Catholic and maybe lose your faith in the Catholic Church, but still believe in God, right? So for myself, I grew up mostly in a Baptist/Methodist environment between my two parents, and I had various different kinds of doctrines given to me at any point in time. I was part of a college ministry. A lot of people who have seen my story know I once had a conversation when I was a Christian with Anthony Magnabosco. That's still on YouTube for part of the History Epistemology series. And while that conversation was also super helpful for me to deconstruct some of my ideas, I think what the big question, because I think some people have big questions and they figure out little questions later. One of the big ones for me was, what do I mean by this idea of faith?
When you say God is life, what does that get to?
But also more so what makes me so sure in this Christian idea, and I can just say, yeah, this Muslim over here is totally wrong. Why do I get to have that privilege of saying I know what truth is and these people can't? What's that difference? And figuring out, okay, well, what exactly do I believe? What does it mean to be a Christian? and figuring out what the Bible is, how it was constructed, as you mentioned, right? In what time periods, who were these authors, and then going even further to like the development of Christian culture and history and how it's changed over time. And you realize this thing has more man-made parts in it than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And also realizing everything I know about God has come to me through human beings. God has yet to actually tell me himself anything.
It's all hearsay.
I've maybe gotten some feelings while praying, but beyond that, he's never talked to me. You know, it's always been people, whether it's through books or through pastors or conversations. People have always been the intermediary there. And so I figured, well, if there is a God and he's out there and he wants to have that relationship with me, he can do that, because I've certainly tried. And until then, I'm just going to assume that this is all just made by people. So that's kind of a short version of my journey. But like Christy, I've talked about it more extensively elsewhere in other places. So you can definitely check that out. But hopefully that answers your question, Jose. Any follow-ups?
And no, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Short, sweet.
Fair enough. Yeah. Thanks for giving us a chance to talk about ourselves.
That's right. Yeah, Lord knows we love talking about ourselves, right? And I like using Lord knows on this show, because then people are going to mention that in the comments too.
Yeah. No, that's true. It is baiting folks a little bit. That is just kind of the unfortunate reality of the culture aspect of all of this.
That's the Texan in me coming out.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
This is maybe something I kind of cribbed from Dr. Darrell Ray, who I know you know and admire. He talks a good deal about how, why is it that you happen to be a Christian when you were born into this majority Christian country?
Right.
And is it possible that if you were born somewhere else, that your common sense would lead you to some other kind of belief?
Exactly.
And I think that that's really evidenced in the fact that we still use phrases like Lord knows and some of these other things. Just the reality that we are from day one inundated with all of these ideas.
100%.
Okay, well, we'll let people know that if they are jealous of all of the people here in the live studio audience, you on YouTube could also be one of those people. Next month, August 27th, we will be again having a live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen will be hosted by Forrest Valkai, Jamie the Blind Limey, and J-Mike. Triple header. Atheist Experience will be Johnny P. Angel, Forrest Valkai, and J-Mike. Doors open at noon. Really hope that we get a chance to see you there. It genuinely is a great time having these groups here, having the live audience reaction. I love doing this every month.
Yeah,
so
it's awesome.
Definitely
Very
encourage
cool.
people to make it if they can. And you want to go ahead and sneak in this call from Robert before we wrap up for the day?
I think we can. We got the green light for overtime here, so let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Robert in Texas, what can we help you with?
Hello, guys. Great show, by the way. I just want to say awesome people. And I think it's good that we can all agree to disagree. So I, like many people, was born into like a Christian household.
Sure.
Kind of assumed everything and didn't really question much. And then I started to question a lot and become doubtful and agnostic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to try to look outside the Bible to try to find truth and meaning for me, which is different for a lot of people. And really what kind of got me more into theism was just the origin, so to speak. Just didn't really make sense to me how things can come from, bangs and molecules. And what I mean is just so advancement to where we have such conscious thoughts to be critical as we are in this debate stage. And I understand that even science can't really explain that. So for me, that's been the dilemma,
Yeah, I hear that.
As much as people want to see a God, which, by the way, does exclude blind people, people want to see that, or people, even I think some atheists want to know, okay, well, is there still that 1% chance? And do we want to risk it if there is?
Okay.
So I have nothing against atheism. I will say, like, for a time I have been. And again, I make no claim that I'm an expert in the field because I'm not. But I enjoy
I get it.
both sides because
Yeah, you want to understand where the universe came from and how we got here, and that's a reasonable desire.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, I'm not prepared to explain that to you. You know, I work in the field of psychology by trade, so we can have some vague conversations about the Big Bang, about redshifting, about the heat death of the universe, and I can try to wrap my head around some of this stuff, but ultimately, I'm somebody who has to say, not only does science not really know about the origins of the universe, but also, even if it did, I'm unprepared to understand them. And I can also say that there is a natural human desire to fill in every question that we don't have an answer for with any substitute that we can find.
Yeah.
It's deeply human to want to fill in those gaps by saying, well, it must have been God. And I would really challenge you to perhaps become more comfortable with the phrase, I don't know. Dan, how's that land?
I think that lands here's my take on this. You say that science isn't so sure, so you lean to Christianity, but that implies that Christians know the origins of the universe, and they don't, right? Like, you don't.
Well,
you
I
say.
apologize. I meant, sorry, sir. I just meant to say I meant like science proving the origin.
Okay. Have Christians proved the origin?
Are you talking about certain, like...
I'm talking about anybody that's believing God, that says God started the origins of the universe. Have they proved that?
I think one way of likely doing that would be by elimination of the other methods.
Okay.
But there's so many options that you haven't even thought of.
I'm going to give you a different example. Let's say I have a time machine and I have a computer, and I bring that computer back to ancient Egyptians. Okay. And those ancient Egyptians, they look at this computer and they say, wow, we have no idea how this works. It must be God. Because if we eliminate all these other explanations, well, we tried to power it with fire and that didn't do anything. Well, we tried to power it with water and that didn't work. That turned the computer off. I think the most reasonable explanation that we can understand is that it has to be God. Would you say that's fallacious? Would you say that that might be bad reasoning?
It could be, yes.
Could be?
It could be.
Okay.
I do agree.
All right. So this is how I take it.
You can't rule out every possibility. I mean, how do you rule out that the universe wasn't created by universe farting pixies?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? We don't have all the answers to the origins of the universe. Absolutely. But to fall in the God explanation is to just give up, honestly, because we don't have anything that points to a God at creating the universe. We really don't. It's just one of aliens creating it or interdimensional beings creating it. We honestly have just as much explanation for those as we do for a God.
No, and I totally agree. Like that's the great thing about the discussions and trying to find research, and not only historically but philosophically and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm just saying, like on my own I'm just one small speck here on this dot on this planet. But I mean, like I said, I try to look at things logically and just in general. And trust me, I'm very doubtful of things.
Yeah.
But it just comes to me very hard to find something that's, I don't know. I just feel like there has to be, and I don't know. And it's not just what I'm feeling. I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm using that word.
No, I actually do want to kind of highlight that. Like, I don't mean to play gotcha, but I really want you to sit with that feeling. You feel like there ought to be some explanation. And I'll tell you what, there is. There is a beginning of the universe. There are facts around that. We just don't have access to all of them.
Yeah.
You know, just because we don't know about something doesn't mean that the something isn't there. It isn't real. But that feeling of there has to be an answer, that's human.
Right.
And it may be leading you to fill that need with some things that are kind of poor substitutes for facts.
It can be that way. Yes, I agree. And I said, thank you for listening. I just wanted to say, like, I'm just one that has that void, and I have just found it conclusively more that it's from a higher being. You know, I know a lot of times people don't like that supernatural stuff because it's kind of nonsense. And I agree, you know, like some of it is, but again, trying to do all the elimination process, I'm open to staying atheist. I am, but right now I'm looking at what we've done. You know, we were able to go to NASA in 2020, you know, in the modern age, and we can't find a beginning. So for me, I think the pursuit of search is still going to be important for everybody. And I think that's good. I think that's a good thing for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as long as you're hanging your hat on the idea that you understand it's just a feeling, then that's all I can agree with you on. Is that it is just a feeling.
Sure.
It doesn't point to anything in reality necessarily. Like, our feelings are wrong about things all the time. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you. It sounds harsh. I'm really trying not to be like that guy. But it's like, look, like, I think that it honestly, by landing on that, for me, it's like, look, that just gives privilege to all these institutions that do say, oh yeah, God is real, and he is the Christian God, and you can kind of make these other sorts of rules happen in play that I don't want to be in play, right? I don't want to give any credence to the folks who are actively trying to eliminate my existence, if anything, right?
Can I make one last quick comment?
course.
I'm sorry. If not, that's fine.
Go ahead.
So I'm still also skeptical of big companies and big pharma and all that. And I mean, even if you go with that being inaccurate, I mean, man is inaccurate too. Science can be inaccurate, as well as, dating back years ago with observation and everything. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying it's just only belief. I just want to add that, I mean, there is some research I've done into it. And again, I'm not claiming I'm an expert theist because I just got into it. But I just wanted to say, like I said, thank you for having me on and give me just a chance to, point that out. I know I'm in the minority, but hey.
I hear you, Robert. I hear you. Just don't fall into the fallacy of Pascal's wager, right? I heard you at the beginning of the call say, well, it's safer, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's safer for me to have this belief than not. And that's kind of the crux of Pascal's wager is, well, there is the threat of hellfire for eternity, so I might as well have that belief. I mean, that's one interpretation of Pascal's wager, but it is like, look, if you get this feeling and it makes you feel good about it, and so it's better to have that feeling than to not, so you can have that belief. You just have to understand that that's vicious. That doesn't get you to truth necessarily. That gets you to a fulfillment of psychological needs, and there are other ways you can fulfill those needs without having to live your life in a falsehood. Now, again, that's a very know-it-all atheist way of saying that. I don't know any other way to say it, though, honestly.
It's totally fair.
Yeah.
And, it does bring up all of this exception finding. If you think about, we don't understand abiogenesis. We don't fully understand, the origins of the universe. But, 300 years ago, basically nobody knew anything about evolution.
Yeah.
And we've worked out so much in that time. The notion that we, just because we haven't figured it all out yet, that it doesn't make sense or that it can't be figured out is just, it's a little bit silly. And I appreciate, Robert, that you are sitting with this discomfort, that you're asking yourself these questions. But let me just give you a little bit longer to cook on it.
Yeah, I want to emphasize, I appreciate you coming to us to call us about this, Robert. It's very good.
Hey, thanks, guys. Like I said, I'm still going to be listening, supporting you guys, and I don't mind us disagreeing. That's how we learn, and that's how we get better.
Very
Thank
cool.
you so much, guys.
Very cool.
Hey,
thank
you. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right.
I really can't hold it against anybody for struggling with that big I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's incredibly important that we recognize just how little we all truly know, and that's okay.
Yes. I agree with that. And I struggle in the conversation like that because I don't want usually I'm good cop and the good cop, bad cop vibe. I feel like you were being good cop there and I was being bad cop, but it's more like, look,
I'm very kind, but also snarky cop is sort of the vibe I'm going for.
It's more just I don't want it to be I guess we'll never know. So a God explanation's okay.
Yeah. Let's just terminate all thought with a cliche.
Yeah. That's a thought terminating cliche, right? It's like we don't have to land on the God thing. I feel like we are still influenced to land on the spiritual or land on the higher being, right? That still seems to satisfy something in us when we really don't have to do that. And maybe that's just something you have to train yourself out of because we were raised to think that way. But I know that was something that I had to wrestle with myself.
Maybe this is a stupid analogy, but I remember probably 5th or 6th grade when you're in very pre-algebra and they're kind of introducing the concept of what if you could not only add numbers to each other, but symbols also. And they kind of introduce these ideas and you're solving for X. And it's the very beginning of the notion of algebra. So it's always solve for X, solve for Y. And then eventually when you get into 8th, 9th grade or what have you, they start to say, sometimes the answer to the question is just going to be 2x. Yeah. Because we don't know what x is. We can still do the math. We can still learn a lot from this equation, but we're still going to have some unknown variables in there. That doesn't mean that we have to give up just because we don't have all of pi.
Yeah. 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 That's it. I think that's it. I think that's all the time we
That's it.
got.
That does it.
today.
Yeah.
Ended on an algebra analogy.
Hey, that's what people always bring in mental health counselors for. Thank you
I was really thinking, I was like, are we going to get comments for that being wrong?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, doing actually ended on 2x, but God, that's not a rabbit hole I want to end.
Yeah. We'll leave it there. I do want to thank our incredible live studio audience for being here. It's been incredible having you. Dan, it's been wonderful being on camera with you. I want to thank our remarkable crew who has been playing with all of this and enhancing this in-studio experience. Every time I'm here, there's some new toy, some new thing to be thankful for. So thank you to our incredible crew. To all of our viewers, I want to thank you as well and remind you that the prompt for this week, let's get that crew cam, give them their proper moment in the sun. Remind our viewers that the prompt for this week is wrong answers only. Where did the Catholic Church really get all of its money? Enter your answer in the comments section below the video and be one of the top 3 answers to be read on screen. And Dan, anything else that you'd like to share?
No, that's it. Thanks, guys, for watching Atheist Experience today. Remember to always keep wanting the truth. Just kidding. That's Truth Wanted's tagline. I just wanted to say that. But
give yourself a big old orgasm, or better yet, somebody else one.
Yeah.
We'll just trade in taglines.
Little combo there.
Thank y'all so much. You have a great day.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.